Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Have you ever wondered why there is such a difference in parenting advice coming from your own parents compared to what you might be doing today? Why is it that each generation's approach to raising children seems so different? In this episode, inshallah, we are going to be discussing the different generational styles from baby boomers to Gen Zs and how these impact on your parenting choices. Before we begin, don't forget to download my free downloadable planner on www.cupofparenting.com/planner. Let's start by looking at the generational gaps in parenting by exploring what each generation actually means. You might have definitely heard these terms before, they're thrown around so much these days. Here's a breakdown of different generational categories and what they mean and how they can affect our parenting styles. First up, you have the baby boomers. These are those of you who were born from 1946 to 1964. What are some key events that happened in these people's lives? Well, first of all, they grew up during the post-World War II economic prosperity. The civil rights movement was happening in the world, and it was the Cold War era. So these experienced parents would probably have traditional, often authoritarian parenting models, and they were encouraged to value hard work, discipline and stability. How did this impact on parenting styles? Well, baby boomer parents tend to favor structured, responsibility and clear boundaries. They often take a tough love approach to parenting. Many embrace a more hands-off approach to technology, having raised their own children before the internet even came into existence. They may be traditional in their views on gender roles and on family structure as well. Next up are the Generation X. These are those of you born from 1965 to 1980. What are some key life events that happened in these people's lives? These are known as the latchkey generation, who grew up during an era of rising divorce rates, the beginning of dual income households when husbands and wives were earning, and economic uncertainty in the world. They were often independent from a young age and saw the beginnings of the digital age. Now, what kind of impact might they have had on their parenting styles? Well, Gen X parents value independence and self-reliance and may encourage these traits in their children. They're generally tech-savvy but still set boundaries around technology use. Many favor a balanced approach, blending discipline with open communication, valuing both structure and flexibility. Next up, we have the millennials, born from 1981 to 1996. Some key life events for these people. While you grew up with rapidly advancing technology, the internet, and social media, you experienced major life events like 9/11 and the Great Recession, shaping a more cautious outlook on finances and security. Generally, millennials are highly educated with a shift towards mental health awareness and mindfulness. What kind of impact might have this had on their parenting styles? Well, they are known for embracing a gentle or conscious parenting styles, and millennials often prioritize emotional intelligence and mental well-being for their children. They're highly engaged with digital parenting tools and social media, and millennial parents tend to foster open communication, encourage individuality, and are more likely to embrace diverse family structures. Next up, we have Gen Zs, and these are those babies of you who were born from 1997 to 2012. And some key life events. They grew up fully immersed in digital culture and social media. This was the norm for them. And they witnessed events like climate change activism, global political shifts, and of course we can't fail to mention COVID-19 pandemic during their formative years. They are highly aware of social justice issues, diversity and inclusivity. What impact does this have on their parenting style? As the youngest parents or baby parents themselves, Gen Zers are tech native and may use many apps and online resources extensively for parenting advice and for other things. They're expected to be the most inclusive generation, like supporting progressive ideas around mental health and wellness. Gen Z parents are highly likely to be adaptable, open-minded, and deeply focused on social and environmental responsibility. Now, I know it might be that generations, or you yourself might say, well, I don't feel like I quite identify by that. But remember, this is a generalization, and this is research of a very large proportion of parents across the globe and across these different generational ages. So these influences often play into the values and approaches each group brings into parenting. You might have baby boomers' structured styles to Gen Z's progressive tech-driven methods. Now, how does this generational difference and cultural difference affect parenting? It's not just the generations that affect parenting styles, and you might see different styles in your own parenting and your parents' parenting and their parents' parenting, but also your culture has quite a big impact as well. Different cultures from the east to the west have completely different parenting styles, and of course they have things in common, but they also have differences in how, they might approach topics such as discipline, such as education, such as family roles. For example, let's have a look at Eastern versus Western parenting. There's different contrasts between the collective cultures, because in the collectivist culture of the Eastern parenting styles, there's an emphasis on family, on community, on respect for elders, on everybody supporting each other to bring up a child. It's very common to even live in extended families, or at least lean on extended family for support for different times in your life. Versus in individualistic cultures, maybe example in the West, where there's a lot of independence, independent living, self-expression, and that kind of thing. So obviously, depending on where you're brought up, your culture will also have an impact on your parenting styles, not just your generational differences. This also impacts the approaches to education. Okay, so in Asian cultures, you might, when looking at education, see that it's quite strict and academic focused and quite grades driven. Whereas in Scandinavian culture, it's more focused on creativity. And we know how their education system varies very, very greatly. They really focus on play in the early years all the way till the ages of 6 and 7, and then start formative learning. What are some challenges that parents might face when navigating generational differences? One is when you have conflicting advice from grandparents or even older family members or other family members, and pressure to adhere to how things were done or doing things their way, versus modern ways of doing things that are according to research or cultural shifts. What are some tips that we can use? Let's have a look. First of all, when you want to set boundaries with grandparents or any family members, and it might not even be family members, it might just even be people in your community who have different views, it can be challenging, especially when you want to remain respectful and maintain a positive relationship with them, obviously, because you love them and you do value their opinion. Here are some strategies to help you navigate those conversations whilst keeping things respectful at the same time. And remember, first and foremost, we are Muslims and we must always respect our older generation. Remember the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, he who does not show mercy to our little children or recognize the rights of our elders is not one of us. So number one, begin with appreciation and empathy. Start by acknowledging the role that they play in your life and express gratitude for their care and involvement. For example, I really appreciate how much you care for me, for my family, for my children. Recognize their perspective. This is a really good skill to have anyway when you're talking to someone and you might not necessarily agree with them. Always be respectful, and they teach you this in customer service as well. Okay, so something like, I understand your perspective, I understand what you're feeling, or I understand you have a lot of experience and you want the best for us. So straight away you are acknowledging that they do have an opinion and a perspective, even though it might be different from yours, but you're acknowledging it from the outset. Number two, be clear and specific. Instead of being vague, set the boundary you want as clear as possible. So, for example, we're choosing to approach parenting in this way and we'd like to ask for your support. So, for example, it might be something like we're choosing to home educate our children. We've done our research, this is why, and we're wondering if you can support us. Something simple like that. When boundaries are clear, they're easier to respect and less likely to cause misunderstandings. Number three, use I statements. So frame your needs using I statements and avoid sounding accusatory. For example, I feel more comfortable when we focus on positive reinforcement with the children rather than saying something like, you're too strict with them. I can't tell you how many times parents have told me that, the grandparents either spoil the children or they say that they're too strict with their children. Or I go through an entire lesson in the final week of my positive parenting course where I explain to them that obviously you've been through an entire course now, so your parenting attitudes and beliefs would have completely shifted. But don't expect that theirs have, and the best way you can do is just lead by example. Keep doing what you're doing, and inshallah, the actions will speak for themselves. So by using an I statement, this minimizes defensiveness and keeps the conversation centered on your perspective and your needs, inshallah. Number 4 is to set boundaries in advance if possible. So if you know certain behaviors or topics will be challenging, have a proactive conversation. For example, I would appreciate it if we could avoid discussing education or politics around the children. Setting expectations ahead of time can prevent boundary crossing situations altogether if done correctly, inshallah. Number 5 is acknowledging differences without needing agreement. Okay, so you can agree to disagree, and that's fine. Respectfully recognize that you've got differing views and make it clear that you don't expect to agree on everything. You can say, I understand you feel differently and I respect your perspective, but for our family, this is how we're going to do things. And this can allow both sides to feel heard without either side feeling compromised, inshallah. Number 6 is to reinforce boundaries with gentle consistency. If they push or question the boundaries, you can respond consistently but kindly. For example, if they bring up a topic you've requested to avoid, you can redirect politely, I'd rather not get into that right now. Sometimes maintaining boundaries takes repeated reinforcement. Politely sticking to them shows that they're non-negotiable while preserving respect. Number 7 is focus on your shared values. Find common grounds to emphasize areas of alignment. If they're concerned about your decisions, you can say, we both want what's best for our children, okay? Even if you've got different approaches, acknowledge that and that'll go a long way, inshallah. Highlight shared goals with them so that you both want the best for the children, so you can keep reminding them that this is also our goal to want the best for the children, and we know that it's your goal as well. Use humor where appropriate. So instead of getting angry, and as a Muslim I've already mentioned in another talk about getting angry, but have lots of patience and try and turn your anger into humor. Or if it's getting a little bit sticky in a certain conversation, just laugh it off and say, oh, remember what we said about not discussing this topic in front of the children. And it doesn't mean you won't discuss it later on, or if you feel like you're not in the right frame of mind to have that discussion, just keep things light-hearted and inject some humor into the conversation, inshallah. This should diffuse any tension. Number 9 is to set physical boundaries where appropriate. For example, I'm talking about things like, it might be that traditionally, if the families get together, you might stay up late, and if that's okay for you, that's fine. But if you feel like it's really stressing you out that your children need to get into bed by a certain time, say 7:30, and the party's still going on, and it's something that's going to impact them, then feel free to say that I need to leave, or, oh, it's my children's bedtime. Don't feel like you need to compromise. If it's then going to have an adverse effect on your children, they start playing up and acting crazy anyway because they're super tired, which children will do. Or for example, when it comes to screen time, sometimes children might think that, oh, we've got freedom because we're at friends or family's house or grandparents' house and we can have as much screen time as we want and the TV's just left turned on. Just say something like, we're trying to minimize screen time, and you can find something alternative for them to do, or suggest something alternative, or set something up where you're either going to visit other people's houses or going out for a walk to the park. Any activity just to keep them busy. It doesn't even need to be outdoors. It could be an alternative activity indoors, but just to let them know that you're minimizing screen time. Number 10 is to reassure them of their role and significance, inshallah. You can say something like, you mean so much to us, and I want to make sure that our relationship stays strong by setting these expectations. I can emphasize that their role in your life is valued, and you just make them feel respected, even if they don't entirely agree with your boundaries. I know I keep mentioning it, keep everything respectful. And number 11, seek support if needed. Okay, if setting boundaries feels difficult, seek support. Like, you and your other half should be on the same page when it comes to parenting, and if it's really bad, then obviously seek advice from someone more senior, someone learned like a scholar or an imam or a counselor. If things are particularly bad in the family in terms of family dynamics. In terms of balancing cultural and generational expectations, find your own parenting identity and stay true to your parenting style whilst also respecting your cultural traditions and family's expectations and experiences, and blend the cultures together if you're a multicultural family. I've said this before. And handle criticism from family in a positive way. Don't take it personally and don't take it to heart. If you enjoyed this video, why not watch my next video, Islamic parenting in light of current challenges. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.